Hey, welcome to Theological Pipe. After a week off for vacation, we are back, so thanks for joining us. If you're on YouTube watching us, click the subscribe, like, comment button. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, any other podcast platform that we're on, hit subscribe. Glad to be back. I'm going to get right into a couple things. Again, Theological Pipe, the idea of this podcast is just to explore sports and culture and politics and news and music and movies and just everything from a theological perspective, that there is a God. Not necessarily going to have like a Bible study or go to verses every time. We might use those, but it's basically just to discuss things from a different perspective that you might normally hear. And so you may or may not know this. I'm in Tulsa, so if you're listening somewhere else, you could Google this, but on K2L.com, in Tulsa, in the Greenwood district where the Tulsa Race Massacre happened 100 years ago, they painted a mural on the streets, or a sign on the streets, Black Lives Matter. And I've said a few things about Black Lives Matter on this podcast before, about the organization, anti-American, Marxist, anti-family, led by some really not so good people. So if you support the organization, I think you need to take another look at it. I think Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NBA, groups like that should really take another look at what they're supporting. The phrase I have no problem with. The organization I do. And again, you can go on the website and look at their stuff, look at the leaders who lead that, and we can talk about that another time. But Tulsa painted Black Lives Matter, the phrase, on one of the streets, and they're having discussions now about having to remove it because other groups are wanting to put things on the street, or other people are upset that they put that there without a proper vote, whatever. But the Westboro Baptist Church, in the article on K2L.com, they asked Tulsa for a street space so they can paint something, and they want to paint it on the hospitals. And I have no idea what it's going to say. It'll probably say something stupid, like coronavirus is, you deserve it, something like that. And I'm not going to get into a whole debate about the Westboro Baptist Church. I will say, if there's anyone, they're just a stupid group of hillbillies, and they're just a few people from the same family. They're nuts. Here's what needs to happen when this discussion comes up. Mayor G.T. Bynum from Tulsa, whoever the city leaders are, here's what it should say. Here's how this conversation should go. Westboro Baptist Church asks for Tulsa for street space for a mural. No, and we move on. That's it. Just no, and let's end it. That's what needs to happen. We just need to say no and move on. Westboro Baptist Church, no. You want to have a discussion about Black Lives Matter and the phrase, and you want to have a deeper discussion, knock yourself out. You want to have a discussion of whether they went through the right channels, knock yourself out. When some backwoods redneck church, who's really not a church, comes up and says, we want this, here's what leaders should do, say no and move on. It's okay to say no. It's okay for leaders to say no. And I think that that's needed way more today than we're getting. Leaders and adults need to be leaders and adults, and sometimes that means saying no. Sometimes when you're a leader, you need to say no, and it needs to happen. So G.T. Bynum, Mayor G.T. Bynum, Tulsa City people, whoever they are, the answer is no. It's not a discussion. It's not a conversation. You tell those nuts the answer is no, and to not come back. We're done. And you move on to something that's more important than the Westboro Baptist Church. Say no. It should happen with the Westboro Baptist Church people. And it's okay to say no to Antifa and to the Black Lives Matter people who are rioting and looting. They're not protesters anymore. They're criminals. When they're breaking into places, when they're looting and stealing TVs, when they're setting things on fire, when they're terrorizing people, when they're going to people's houses now and confronting them, they're criminals. And adults in Seattle, Adults in Portland, adults in Atlanta, adults in the front of the White House, adults in all these cities where these fools are out there doing this, say no and get rid of them. And I don't mean get rid of them in a horrible way. Arrest them, sweep the streets from them, set up a curfew for a while, get rid of them. And the problem is too many adults have sat by and let it happen because they thought it was politically expedient for them and it was going to help their reelection cause, or it was going to hurt their opponent, or it was going to hurt the president. And now it's gone on for months. If you go to Portland for 3 months now, there's been rioting and burning and looting and rapes, and there's been murders in that Chaz chop place. And now just it's like, oh, we better do something. Well, where were you 3 months ago? Where were you when the looting started? In Chicago, they're breaking in on the Magnificent Mile, the place where all the shops are. They're looting that. Leaders should have been leaders when this started happening, saying, listen, if you protest, that's great. The second that you break the law, the second that you block a street, the second that a rock is thrown, the second that something is set on fire, the second that you break into somewhere and loot something, we're done and you're going to jail. And we're going to prosecute you and not arrest you and then let you go the next day. And adults need to do that all over the place. It's okay to say no. That's what adults do. We've even had stories now where some of the Black Lives Matter people, and again, I don't want to disparage the whole movement, but the organization, the Marxists, the anti-American people, the groups, they're now saying, going to businesses saying, you're going to support Black Lives Matter, you're going to give us money, and if not, we're going to come and, attack your place. So you need to pay us protection money. That's mafia stuff. And again, someone needs to say, no, there's not a discussion. There's not they do have a case to make. No, the answer is no. You're breaking the law, you're extorting things, you're looting, you're robbing, you're breaking in, you're assaulting people. The answer is no. It's okay to say no. People need to say no, and it should have happened in the beginning. And the problem is now it's a lot harder to put the cap back on the bottle once you let it all out. And so it's going to take even a lot harder work for people in Seattle, for people in Portland, for people in Chicago, for people all over these cities where all this stuff is going on. And I would venture to say a vast majority of the people in all those cities don't want what's happening. Even if they sort of agree, like, yeah, we need to, protest and stuff, they don't want to be extorted. They don't want to live in fear. And the leaders need to step up and say no. Sometimes leaders need to be leaders, and it should happen now. We need to stop waiting and stop playing games with people's lives when this stuff is going on. Leaders need to say no, and it needs to happen. So, G.T. Bynum with the Westboro people, no. Just an unequivocal no, exclamation point, period, and then we're done. Don't even humor a discussion about it. Don't even justify saying no. Just say no. People will agree with you. When it comes to rioters and looters in all these cities, no. You don't need to justify it. You don't need to clarify it. You don't need to say, well, we're saying no, but we still... No, and you move on and you do the right thing. And that's kind of where I was wanting to start. Now, kind of am talking more about leadership and how you lead and how sometimes you're supposed to say no. There's another article that you could go read, and there's stuff on Twitter about it. But there was a Twitter thread, and I'm not going to give the guy's name again because I don't want to. I don't want people going on there and like bashing the guy or whatever. But he was a teacher, and he basically was saying that he has a concern. I'm going to see if I can find it real quick while I'm talking. The teacher had a concern that because of a lot of the instruction going online over the fall for some of the classes, because the stuff is going to go online, they were worried, this teacher was worried that parents would get to listen in on what they're teaching. And he was worried about that. He was talking about... that's not right because here, let me say this. It's a Philadelphia teacher. He says parents with access to virtual classrooms could do damage to what they're teaching. And it says on Saturday, this is from the Daily Wire, and you could read it in other places. It says on Saturday, a teacher posted a thread on Twitter in which he bemoaned the possibility that parents who had access to watching their children's virtual classrooms would do damage to honest conversations about gender, sexuality, and racism and stuff like that. And the teacher, I'm not going to use his name, teaches in a high school in Philadelphia, and he has a book that he wrote about race conversations. And here's kind of what he says. So this fall, virtual class discussions will have many potential spectators, parents, siblings, etc., in the same room. We'll never quite be sure who is overhearing the discourse. What does this do for our equity inclusion work? Question mark. I'll answer it. Nothing. It should do nothing. Okay, and he goes, how much have our students depended on the somewhat secure barriers of our physical classroom to encourage vulnerability? How many of us have installed some version of what happens here stays here to help this? And he goes on, it's a lot longer, and there's a bunch of people responded, rightfully so, saying, yeah, no, I think you got it wrong, dude. You're a teacher teaching high school, and there were a bunch of people responding, or some teachers responded agreeing with the guy, and they taught middle school and high school, and they're like, yeah, I know this is crazy. You know, we don't want parents knowing what we're teaching. We don't want parents to see what's going on here. And I get the idea behind it, but man, no. This is not. I'm an educator. You know, I've taught middle school. I've taught at a alternative school for at-risk students, and I teach in the college classroom. Any parent, any administrator, any outside person that wants to watch or listen, I welcome it. Now, I don't want just people from the outside walking in. That's not safe for the students. But if you're teaching online and you're upset because parents may watch and you're afraid that they're going to hear what you're saying and might take issue with what you're saying, then you really might want to think about what you're teaching. You're there to teach. Reading, writing, arithmetic, the basics. Teach these kids to think. You don't want to indoctrinate students. You want to educate students. Indoctrination is not the answer. It's education. You want kids to think for themselves. And you better believe that if you view parents as the enemy, which is what a lot of the tweets talk about, which is what this guy talks about, is parents are the enemy. Parents are a concern for us. No. What you should say is, I welcome you listening to my lecture. I welcome you talking to Come conversate with me if you have a problem with what I'm teaching your kids. What I'm going to teach your kids is age appropriate, it's appropriate for the classroom, and I have no problem with you watching. If you have a problem, then that's a problem to me. And again, this is where I think some sort of leadership and some sort of, people in education need to step up. And again, honestly, a lot of teachers did step up and say, no, dude, you need to not have that attitude that what happens here stays here. We're not going to tell mom and dad. When I read that, it bugs me because it's one of two things where my brain goes to it. It's like, okay, you're trying to indoctrinate students and not have an honest conversation about something, or you don't know how to defend your position and you don't want pushback. You know, I'll tell you what my positions are on guns, on abortion, on the Bible, on Christianity, on theism, on atheism, on politics, on taxes, name it. I'll tell you what it is. You'll hear it. And if you want to debate with me, let's do it. I'm willing to defend any position I have on those things. I'm even willing to admit that I might be wrong. But what I don't want to do is say, you have to think the way I think. You have to believe the way I believe, and I'm going to teach you something, and I don't want anyone else to listen. I don't want anyone else to hear, because I have your brains when they're mushy, and I can mold them and shape them and indoctrinate you into what I believe, and we don't want to tell mom and dad. And it's kind of there's a creepy vibe there when I hear that kind of stuff. And I'm just against educators who want to indoctrinate to a certain point of view, whether it be a liberal point of view or a conservative point of view. The purpose of education for me is teaching students how to think for themselves, how to find information for themselves and make their own decisions, and to be able to debate and stand up for that. And I think diversity should include diversity of thought, diversity of opinion. There was a case, or there was a story a few weeks ago. Penn State set out a tweet from the diversity and inclusion department at Penn State, and it said something like, all races are welcome here, all genders are welcome here, all races are welcome here. I may have said that twice. All these things are welcome here. Liberal students are welcome here. Conservative students are welcome here, and they put this thing basically saying everyone's welcome. They could have just said everyone's welcome, but they labeled it down. Within a few hours, they pulled the tweet down because a lot of people in the college complained that they used conservative students, said conservative thought is welcome here. Sorry, that's not education, that's indoctrination. If you're offended by conservative thought, that's weak. If you're offended by liberal thought, that's weak. Let's have that debate. But to put that tweet up and then pull it down, it's a big problem with education. And I think that there are some schools that do a really good job of welcoming thought, of welcoming opinions, of welcoming different, diverse opinions, diverse thoughts, that kind of stuff. And there's some that don't. And this guy basically saying, I don't want parents to watch. I don't want people to watch me teach. That would be concerning to me as an educator, as a principal, as a leader. And I think that it's just another example of things that need to be fixed in this society. So I'm going to end real quick on sports. I think earlier today the report was that the Big Ten was going to cancel college football, that they voted to cancel college football. There was a mainly huge outcry from a lot of people saying that's stupid, you shouldn't do it, let's have football, we need football, sports is important, college football is important, etc. And I think they're going to vote today or tonight or tomorrow. They didn't make the final decision yet. And there's other schools still talking about what they're going to do for football, the SEC, the Big 12, the Pac-10, the big conferences and stuff like that. But if the Big 10 cancels, other schools might follow. And college football, there's a hashtag now that's out there that says let them play, or we want to play, or let us play. And it's led by college football players and coaches. And if you go on Twitter, which Twitter's not real life, but if you go there for sports information and for news, you can see that tons of players, Trevor Lawrence, quarterback of Clemson, Chuba Hubbard, I would call it Chuba Hubbard, a running back from Oklahoma State. And you could, I'm not going to list the play, tons and tons of players. Let us play. We want to play. We're ready to play. We're on campus. We've been practicing. We're following the guidelines. We're staying safe. We're being tested. We want to play. So all those players are putting out information saying, let us play. We want to play football. Coaches, Jim Harbaugh, when the first report, Jim Harbaugh is the coach of the University of Michigan, when the first report came out that the Big Ten might cancel the football season, he came out with a statement saying, we want to play. The science is on our side. Let us play. We're doing the right thing. We want to play. Other coaches followed suit saying, let us play. We want to play. Let us play. So you have players, you have coaches, and you have a lot of fans saying, we want to play football. Let us play football. And then you have college presidents who are never big fans, or I shouldn't say never, who are usually, for the most part, most of them are not fans of athletics. But college presidents and a lot of sports, liberal, woke sports people who seem to be rooting for college football to be canceled for some reason. And so they're saying, no, we shouldn't be playing football. We don't need to be playing football. So players, coaches, majority of fans, let's play football. We're playing baseball, we're playing basketball, we're playing hockey. We're doing those things right now, and every one of those sports are people testing positive in those sports? Somewhat, but they're doing a good job. The NBA is doing a great job in the bubble. Hockey, which is a contact sport where people are banging up against each other just like football, they're doing fine. Baseball, they've had some teams with some problems, but that's because the teams went out and did stupid things, but they're still playing, and people are not, they're getting healthy, and they're recovering and still playing. They're all playing. The science, if you look at the CDC recommendations, if you look at pediatric groups, if you look at a bunch of other people, they're saying you need to open the schools. You need to have people back in schools. Now, I'm not going to argue for or against opening schools as a whole. That's a whole nother discussion. But for sports and for the science and the CDC and pediatricians and players and coaches and fans saying, yes, let's play. And then you have college presidents and the woke sports people just criticizing people saying, you can't play football. Where were you? Were you wearing a mask? You can't complain if they cancel football, which, yes, you can. You can complain. If you didn't wear a mask, you can complain. If you wore a mask, you can complain. If you think COVID is overblown, you can complain. If you think COVID is the most deadly disease in the world, you can complain. That's one of the things that being an American allows us to do, is to complain when we want to. And right now, what we want is, what I would want is, again, for these leaders to be led by the truth, right? There's a great quote by Henry David Thoreau, one of my favorite authors, and he says, rather than love, than money, than fame, and I'm going to add some other things, than politics, than my agenda, than my own beliefs, he says, give me truth. The quote is, rather than love, than money, than fame, give me truth, right? Give me truth. What's the truth? Let truth be your guide. Don't let politics be your guide. Don't let your agenda be your guide. Don't let the fact that there's a guy in the White House that you like or don't like be your guide. Let the truth be your guide. We're living in a time where there's a pandemic and there's a virus going around. We've lived through the swine flu and the bird flu and other flus and other diseases and SARS and all these things. We've lived through them before. We're going to live through more. I'm not going to say I don't know the answer, but what I do know is players, coaches, fans all want to play. CDC, pediatric groups say we need to open schools and people need to get back and doing things. We also know that other sports, baseball, basketball, hockey, they're all playing. They're all doing fine. So for a group of college presidents to decide, we don't want to play football, and it just seems to go against the truth. And the truth may be somewhere in the middle. It may be dangerous to open up. We probably will have more cases when people start getting together. But barring that, we can't stay shut down for another year. We can't stay, if you go back to March, it was 15 days. Let's do 15 days to flatten the curve. Well, the curve's basically been flattened, and it's been 5 months. For 5 months, people have social distanced. People have worn masks. Some of them haven't, but a lot of people have. People have worked from home. Tons of people are working from home now. They're going to work at home for the rest of the year. Businesses have shut down. So some people are working, some people aren't. And this has been going on for 5 months. And so for a group of guys, players, coaches, fans, all wanting to play football, the truth should be their guide. The truth and what people are saying should be their guide, not their agenda. Let the truth lead them. And the truth is saying we need to play football, in my opinion. It's saying, are there risks? Yes, there's risk. And you could go follow people on Twitter who will compare the risk, and they'll say, for college-age students, people in their 20s, they're more likely to have an accident on the way to practice than they are to die of COVID. Okay, so, and you could go, maybe they manipulated the math, I don't know. But the risk for people under 50 years old, under 70 years old, is really, really small. And it's in line with other viruses, with other diseases, with other things that we face. And so opening up school, opening up football, opening up life, again, with restrictions, sure. Wearing masks, knock yourself out. Social distancing, that's fine. Washing your hands all the time, yes. Taking your temperature when you go somewhere, absolutely. And we know that with baseball, basketball, and hockey, they're getting the best treatment in the world. And we know that college athletic programs are massive. And you know that a college student that's playing football at the University of Oklahoma, University of Texas, Ohio State, Clemson, Oklahoma State, anywhere, they're getting the best medical care. They're getting the best nutrition. They're working out. They are the healthiest people in the world, and they're going to have access to the greatest medical care in the world. Man, let's play football. And I know that's me being selfish because I'm a college football fan, but I also am trying to follow what other people are saying. Not an agenda, not fear, not some hyperbolic reaction to something. Man, let them play. The football players want to play. The coaches want to play. The fans want them to play. We're playing other sports. College football needs to play. So I know nobody, no one from the NCAA is going to watch this and say, hey, that guy on the Theological pipe, he made some good points. We need to play football. Let's tell the college president. I know that's not going to happen. But I also know that there's, and again, you could disagree with me, and that's fine. But I'm saying that we should play, and I could be wrong, but again, based on the science, based on the stats, based on the facts, it really says to not play is really going in the direction that's opposite science, that's opposite of what the truth is. And so rather than love, rather than money, rather than fame, give me truth. And there's a great quote from the Bible that says the truth will set you free. And I think that's what we need to search for is truth, not an agenda, not a political agenda or a political ideology that we have to follow and we're going to stretch things to fit our path and to say, well, I'm going to read things from a certain lens. Let's take the lens off. Let's go to the truth and let's let that set us free and let it be our guide. So college football, man, let them play. I hope they play, and I hope that they're safe. And that's nothing. Hope for the best, right? Hope for good things. I know it's scary, but positivity is a good thing. Having a good mindset is a good thing. It's a healthy thing. If you live in fear and you're always anxious and you're always stressed out, it does horrible things for your immune system. It does horrible things for your body. Be positive. We're going to get through this. There's sports going on right now. Things are going to get better. We're going to get through, let's have that kind of mindset. And again, let the truth be your guide. Truth is going to set you free. So I'll leave with that. I'll say, put that in your theological pipe and smoke it. And thanks for joining us, and good to be back, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.